In this video, I'm going to talk about creativity through constraints. And I want to lead off this video with a really interesting story about how constraints, very tight constraints, actually led to one of the most important works and books of all time. Now, the story goes, there's two gentlemen playing golf one day, and one was actually just starting a publishing company called Random House Publishing, now very well known. The other was an author. They were playing golf, and the person that started the publishing company bet his friend, who again was the author, that he couldn't write a book using only 50 different words. The author, being pretty established already at the time, went ahead and took the bet. I think it was a $50 bet, and they shook on it. Bet was made. The author ended up accomplishing the task, and that book is Green Eggs and Ham, which everybody has obviously heard of, and the author is Dr. Seuss, obviously. That's a level of creativity that's pretty amazing, and he accomplished it by putting very tight constraints on his work, but it forced him to think more creatively, because if he just said, well, I'm going to write another children's book without any constraints, he probably would have, come up with some good stories. Obviously, he has very many popular books, but Green Eggs and Ham was actually the most popular and most sold children's book of all time. And probably didn't even realize there's only 50 words. That's why it's very repetitive. But he, within that constraint of having only 50 words, he was able to, I guess you could say, think outside the box, or think in a very different way that forced him to, delight the reader in different ways than if it had just been kind of another story using every word and the vocabulary. And another popular example of creativity through constraints is Twitter. A lot of people use Twitter. I don't know if it's still the case. I know when it was in the beginning, I think you had like 140 characters to work with, and people managed to accomplish a lot with 140 characters. You can really get your message across. And when you're forced with these constraints, you're forced with this very limited amount of characters that you can use. You have to really think deeply, how can I convey my message in as few characters as possible? And, when I write, I always try to take that into account. I always try and be as concise as possible. Maybe not as concise as Dr. Seuss, but he's a much better writer than me. So I always try to think of, if I put limitations on myself, whether it's a time limitation or a limitation of characters or some kind of constraint, it forces me to think on a deeper level, and it kind of like ignites a different level, or it kind of kicks me into like a higher gear of thought process. And I think we all have kind of done this at one time or another, or people like me, I pretty much always do this. You wait until the last possible minute to do something, so you're on a very tight deadline. You're on a super constrained deadline, and a lot of people actually, it's been shown to do their best work in this kind of manner, and it's because your brain's just kind of working at a different level. You feel, you're kind of heightened. Your fight or flight response is kicked up a little bit, and it works in the short time. You think clearer. You're a little bit more focused. And that's always when I do my best work. And, not everybody likes to wait to the last minute, because it is kind of a stressful situation, but that's just a constraint that I put on myself, because it helps me, I feel, focus and get more done in a shorter amount of time. So that's all I got for this video. Just use this as a method, if you're trying to do something big, even, say, write a book or whatever, try to think about putting some constraints on it. Don't make it like an open-ended or very like an infinite almost like endeavor. Try to put something on it that makes it a little bit more constrained, where you have to think a little bit more deeply about how to accomplish something. And who knows, maybe you'll write the next best-selling children's book. All right, that's all I have for this one. I'll see you in the next video.